Now, it's going to be a little bit different if you are rendering using Renderman or Mental Ray or Arnold. And let's just save what we have right here before we get into the nuts and bolts of that. So now I'm going to save my scene as, we're going to call this O2. So we've saved O1, saved it one more time, Control S, and now we have O2. So this is not going to work if we're using Renderman. All right, so I'm going to go to Renderman here, and I'm going to first of all create some lights in my scene. So I'm going to go to my preset browser. I'm going to go to my light rigs, and I'm going to create a really quick 3-point light setup. I'm just going to import that. And here they are. So I'm going to hit Control G to group them. And I'm going to name it 3-point lights. Secondly, we need to assign a different shader to both of these. So this first one, I'm going to assign a new material. Actually, yeah, I'm going to assign a new material. We're going to go to Renderman, and we are going to, you could do either Pixar Disney or Pixar Surface. So let's go to Pixar Surface and take a look at the attributes. And here it is. This is a Pixar Surface node. So I'm going to name this Pixar S underscore purple. See? Underscore purple leaf mat. And it's pretty similar to just using a regular Maya software in that we would go to color, channel, and go to the checkerboard icon and choose a file. But this one's going to be a little bit different. So let's go to the image name, and let's see, which one do we want? The PNG is pretty good. Yeah, so we're going to use this PNG and open it. Okay. It's not going to show up correctly, and I'll show you how you can make it show up correctly. And then we're going to do the same thing over here. So I'm going to right mouse press and assign a new material. And in Renderman, it is going to be Pixar Surface. And we're going to call this red leaf. And under the color channel, we are going to assign this PNG. Okay. Let's save what we have so far. And let's just do a render and see what it looks like. So let's look through the render preview. And a separate window will open. And here it is. Oh, well, it is showing. It appears to be showing properly. I don't know that it is. And so here what we're going to do is we're going to double check. So in order to do that, I'm going to create a new light source, and it's going to be a dome light. And let's see if there is any, yes, we have an HDR dome or HDR lighting that we will apply. So we have basically double lighting. We're also going to go to Windows, Settings, Preferences, and we're going to restore default settings of our lighting so that when we go to color management, it is now checked and we hit save. And let's take a look at what this looks like. So once again, we'll open up the preview render for this. All right, so as I suspected, we aren't actually seeing right here the illusion of actual leaves. We see the boxy black area of the plane. So how do we get rid of that? Well, I'm going to show you guys. Let's discard this. Let's also go into render settings. We want this render to be a little bit different or bigger. So I'm going to do HD 1080 and that'll render larger. So we're going to go back to Photoshop, our friend Photoshop. And we are going to open our ferns. So let's go and find them. I think they are here. Nope, they sure aren't. 3D object, like this. Sorry, my projects, here we go. Source images, yay. All right, and let's take a look at this as details. All right, so here is a PNG file. We only need to open one of these. We only need one. So with this layer selected, I'm going to hit Control A, or Control click rather. Control click. If you Control click on the layer, you should see that it will select the object that's within the layer perfectly. All right, so after we have Control clicked on our layer and selected it, what we're going to do with the new layer is we're going to fill it with white. And so the next thing we're going to do, so this is a white layer, we're going to create another new layer. You can hit Control D to deselect. And then we are going to fill the background layer with black. And then we're going to go File, Save As. And we need to make sure we save this as a bitmap. I accidentally saved it as a PNG earlier, and that is incorrect. So we want to make sure we save it as a bitmap, and we would save it as fern leaf, and this is black and white. Black and white too. Now we already have a version, so I don't need to resave it, but now you know how to do so. All right, so we're going to go back here, and we are going to go to back to the hypershade. So these are, this is my Pixar surface node, and there's something called a presence node, or right here. And this is where we're going to attach that black and white image. So if you click in the work area and hit Tab, you'll get this little box that comes up, and I'm going to search for a file, and I want a file texture. So here it is. Here's the file texture. And the file texture that I'm going to attach is the fern black and white. See if I actually did it properly. And then we're going to attach the out color to our presence channel, or out alpha rather, the out alpha to our presence channel. So that is the fern leaf PNG purple leaf. So let's take a look at the red leaf. So I'm going to select the red leaf and then select the input output option here. Hit Tab, type in File, select File Texture. We have to do it for both of these. And we're going to attach our black and white PNG. And our out alpha is going to go into the presence. So now that we have done that, let's make sure this stays within camera. So now that we have done that, we should be able to render it. I just saved it, by the way, Control S to save, just in case it decided to crash right when I render it. Always a good idea to save. So we're just waiting for. Okay, so as you can see, there are two ferns here and using Renderman, one that looks correct and the other that didn't. So the one thing that I did not do correct was the file type that I saved this as. This needs to be saved as a bitmap, not a PNG. So I had to go back into Photoshop, and I just needed to save my my fern as a bitmap, BMP. B as in boy, M as in Mary, P as in Paul, instead of a PNG. So please save your black and white image as a bitmap. Okay, so now that it's saved as a bitmap, this is correct, and it shows up properly. So let's fix the issue that's going on with the red fern over here in our hypershade right now. So I'm going to select my red leaf mat and open that up. And as you can see, first of all, I have the incorrect texture selected. I have the one that's, the leaf is black, and of course, as I had said before, that's a transparency. So we are going to go to our bitmap, our black and white bitmap. And here it is. So here is the white leaf with the black background, and we're going to click that. And now, as you can see, it has updated in our render view accordingly. Now, just to double check this, I am going to go to our actual Renderman renderer, so render, preview renderer. And instead of rendering it out in the viewport, we're going to render it out with the Renderman renderer. And here we go. So now, as you can see, it's looking a lot like it did with the Maya software renderer. However, obviously the lighting is better that we have in the scene. And we can see that we don't have the parts of the plane that we want to be invisible showing as black swatches or black parts of the object. Now, the other cool thing about applying this effect this way, so applying the bitmap as a separate image, is that the shadows that show up are not going to be square. They're actually going to look like the leaf itself. So let's create a plane really fast. So we're going to create a plane. We're going to hit R and make it huge. Let's make that big. Let's try and move it. See? There we go. This should be underneath the ferns. All right, so now that we've done that, let's go to image and render it again. Hopefully we'll see the shadow. Oh, and we do. It's not super duper crisp, but you can see that it shows up as the shape of the leaves. We can actually take this a little further. We can make the dome light, we can hide it, so we only have the lighting from our 3-point lighting. And we can also move the plane up a bit, so it's a little bit closer to our leaves. We can also show the topology, so we can see where they are in relationship to one another. There we go. And now we can go and render this out again. So we can go image, render again. Let's check this out. All right, lighting's different, so we turn off one light, but as you can see here, you can see that the actual shadows of our wonderful ferns are showing up in the shape of the leaves. So this is actually superior to how Maya software would render this out if you're just attaching a targa. If you're just attaching a targa file, what's going to happen is the shadows are going to show up as the rectangle squares that they are. And I'm going to cancel this render right here and show you what I mean. So let's discard this, Control S to save. And we are going to open our previous scene. So this was Fern Test 02. So we are going to open up Fern Test 01. All right. So Maya crashed on me when that error came up, and so I've reopened the program, and we're looking at the Fern Test 01 that has the Maya software rendering. Now, I've added some lights to the scene. I also added a plane. So here I have a directional light for those of you who are maybe new to Maya. I added a directional light. I went into my attribute editor, so remember that's Control A, and I turned on shadows. So in my software, shadows are not automatically turned on. So in this case, I clicked on use depth map shadows, and that turns on shadows. If you want to have softer shadows, you would up the filter size. Right now my filter size is 1, so the shadows will be very sharp. If I made it 5, they'd be a lot softer, and so on and so forth. I also added a secondary light, which is a spotlight, and I made it half as strong as my key light, which is my directional light. I have not added a third light. I probably should, which is would bring this nice rim light here. So you can do that rather easily if you just go to create lights and oopsie. So we could use, let's see, do a point light. They're pretty bright, as you can see. So we're going to do point light, and I don't want it emitting diffuse. Really, I just want it to emit specular. As you can see, point lights affect things in multiple directions. This material I use is not a shiny material, so if I clicked off emit diffuse, you really wouldn't be able to tell that the light was even there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this down to 0.25. And let's see if there's any difference. So if I hit H, so we can tell that there is a bit of a difference. All right, and to see my shadows in my preview window, I went to shading, or rather lighting. I went to lighting and I just checked on shadows. This only works if you have shadows turned on one of your lights. I only have it turned on my directional light. As you can see in these other lights, if I go to shadows, I've not turned on use depth map shadows. I have not done that. Okay, so right now, really the only shadows that are on are my directional light. All right, so we're going to do an actual render here. So we're going to go to my render settings, just make sure it's in my software, which it is. I'm going to save this file as save. I'm just going to save scene. And I'm going to, let's do a little preview renderer here. All right, let's make this bigger. So I'm going to render settings and make it HD 1080. There we go. All right. So as you can see here, the shadows are a little bit different from how they looked using Renderman. Here we see that we are getting very boxy shadows. And the reason we're getting these boxy shadows, these rectangular shadows, is because the actual object in the scene is a rectangle. And so that's the drawback of using a targa in your scene with an alpha map attached. It works great in my software, except when it comes to the shadows. And so in this case, you're not going to get the super realistic shadows that you want, just because it's going to create the shadow of the actual object in the scene as opposed to the image. Okay. All right, so one thing you could do to manufacture shadows, you could bring an image through the light and project that image through the light. So that's one way to do that. But if you don't want to see any of these shadows at all, what you can do is you can actually turn off an object's ability to project shadows. So we'd have to go into the attribute editor of the object itself. And if we go to object display in the attribute editor, you can uncheck cast shadows. And as you can see, when I click, when I uncheck cast shadows, the shadow disappears. All right, so that is something you can do if you are using my software and you don't want to see a bunch of boxy shadows. All right, guys, those are, that's the tutorial for creating plant life using planes. It's simple 2D images with either an alpha map attached in the actual image or a separate alpha plugged into a different channel if you're using Renderman. All right, until next time, bye-bye.